Hello everybody and welcome to our Wicked Wednesday webinar for the month of September. Gosh, I can't believe we're finishing up the end of Q3 and about to head into our final quarter this year, which is awesome and exciting at the same time. I wanted to do things a little differently today and show you who we're talking to. So the awesome Nikki Shah, as you can see here, who is a recent LBD member, and I know a few of you have had the pleasure of her company at dinner, and we're now working together in the LBD Ventures community, which is our startup and early stage business community, which is going really well and really helping our businesses to take the next steps and really start diving into what people need to do in order to unlock success. So today's going to be a combination of business discussion and personal stories. And for those of you who don't know Nikki, I'll obviously give her the chance to tell her story, but hopefully no tissues at the ready. But she's got a very emotional story, and something that's going to affect or is affecting 1 in 2 of us here in Australia around the conversation of cancer and who's being impacted and what can we do about it. So before I kick off and hand over to Nikki, I just wanted to set the scene and let you know how we met. And it was, probably about 18 months ago, wasn't it, now? And a beautiful connection of both of us who we didn't realise at the time. But she connected Nikki to me because of Nikki's story. And she connected us because I had gone through a loss of my partner 10 years ago now, and Nikki came to me when she just literally about a month had lost her partner, and I will let her tell the story, but that was really how we met. And I think perhaps it was a really supportive for Nikki at the time because she could see that there was life after a hugely traumatic event, and I was able to talk to her because it was 8 years ago for me without tears, even though the conversation did bring up lots of goosebumps and wanting to cry, but I didn't. And since I've known Nikki, she has grown so much as an individual, as a business owner, and I'm so happy where you are right now because it's so exciting to be a part of this journey. Nikki is a groundbreaker. She's actually bringing a social movement to Australia, and I'm really excited to be here with her. And I feel like, Nikki, you are such a courageous woman. You are walking your talk, not just courage in what you've been through personally, but courage in being a business owner and being someone that's actually disrupting and bringing a product to Australia that we perhaps haven't had before. So let me end my little spiel there, and I will come back after Nikki's presentation. And hang on tight because it's going to be a fun ride. And I will stop sharing my camera. I just wanted to say hello, and let's get into Nikki's story.
Okay, so I'm actually going to take off my camera as well, and so it's just going to be on audio. But yeah, I'll see you guys soon. So this is all about the conversation with cancer, and oh, things have gone a little bit wrong. I don't know what's happened.
Sorry. Stop sharing. Hang on, it's me, technology. Stop sharing my webcam. Sharing.
There we go.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much, Paula, for the beautiful intro. So I just wanted to talk to you guys about what's been going on with me for the past 18 months, or probably a little bit longer than that. As Paula mentioned to you, I've had quite the journey, and I'm part of the Little Black Dress Ventures community now, which has been such an amazing thing and something that I've seen myself grow even in the past 4 months now. So I just wanted to start off by introducing myself. So my name is Nikki Shah, and I am the founder of a business called My Muse that I set up last year. We're going to talk about a couple of different things today. So Paula, if you can just move over onto the next slide. Thank you. So a few things that we're going to talk about is the why. So why I decided to even do anything like this, and talk about the conversations. So talk about the conversations around cancer and things that might be able to help any of you that may be going through something personally, or going through a family member or a friend or a colleague that has been diagnosed with cancer, and just some little takeaways that you could have. And the creation, what I've actually created in terms of my muse. And then a little ask at the end for any of you that are listening that might be able to help me make this into a bigger movement and get people talking about it. So the first thing is the why. So as you can see on the slides that have come up, there's a couple of different pictures on there. And the first one that's on the left is a person called Mike. So Mike was my best friend for around 8 years, and became my boyfriend. However, 4 years ago, he got diagnosed with osteosarcoma, which is cancer of the bone. And he got cancer in his knee, and he just turned 30. He'd had his 30th birthday earlier on that year, and got told that he needed to have an operation and start treatment straight away. During that time, I was actually his main carer, so I was working full time as well as caring for him full time as well, which was really quite challenging, but something that I just decided that I just did. I didn't even really think about the parts of my life that it was going to affect, but he was the most important person in my life, and so I was going to be there for him. So I continued to work as well as looking after him. My company initially was extremely supportive, but it got to the point where there was a strain for the company. They didn't know how to support me. I actually moved companies during the time that he had his diagnosis, and the second company that I worked for also knew exactly what was going on with Mike, and I even told them before they offered me the contract as to they didn't have to take this on board. I did understand that it was a huge ask, and I was happy in the job that I was previously in, but they said that they would support me 100%. And so I decided to jump ship and move to another company and help them establish their business in Sydney. And during that time, Mike actually got given the all clear, and that's where this picture was taken. We were in the Cook Islands in, I think it was in May, and he'd been told that he no longer had cancer. So we both pretty much were wearing those smiles the entire time, and it still brings tears to my eyes now, looking at that picture. But anyway, and yeah, so a couple of weeks after that trip, he went in for a checkup and got told that his cancer had spread, and it was now in his lungs, and he was terminal. So Mike passed away last January, in 2018, and it was one of the toughest times in my life. During this time, I'd actually had two other of my closest friends diagnosed with cancer, one with testicular cancer, who was 26, and my other friend that was diagnosed with breast cancer and had already started treatment. She even came to Mike's funeral wearing a headscarf and had just finished her chemo treatment the day before. So I had cancer that was surrounding me, and work was really difficult. The conversations became harder and harder, and after taking 2 weeks off from work, I decided it was time for me to go back and try and re-establish my life again. And the first day that I went into the office, I got pulled into the boardroom at the end of the day and asked how I was doing, and I said that I was just trying to get through the day as best as I could. And they told me that it had been 2 weeks and they expected me to be back to normal, that I knew that this was going to come, and I was making other people in the office feel uncomfortable. That was my trigger point. So that's when I actually thought, this can't be real. How can human beings talk like this and call that their support? So went online and tried to find some companies out there that were able to support me and the business that I was working for with these conversations. And to my absolute shock, there was nothing in Australia. nothing came up. The only things that came up were some outdated documents that the Cancer Council had produced. And so I started to delve a bit deeper and found that there really was no support out there. And so this was always playing in the back of my mind. And in May 2018, I actually ended up having a mutual agreement to leave my job, and sat at my very good friend's big dining table. And she was just like, "What do you want to do?" I was like, I have no idea. I don't know whether I want to stay in a corporate job. I was at the time really, really concerned because I had no other support. I didn't have family that lived here, so I needed money to pay my rent and to live. And so she did say, "What do you want to do?" And I said, the only thing that I can remember is that when I was at uni, before I started my uni degree, which was in physiotherapy, so I've had an interesting career path along the way. My interview said, the person that was interviewing me asked, what do you want out of this degree? And I said, I just want to be able to help people. And being a physio, you did pretty much that, helping people from an injury or from surgery. And I absolutely loved my job, but when I moved to Australia, I decided that it wasn't something that I wanted to continue full time. So I got offered a job in recruitment. And even with recruitment, my whole thing was that it wasn't the money that was my driver, but it was that I was helping people. So I was helping people with their careers, but I was also helping people with their lives, and having a job where they could raise their family and live the life that they wanted. And that was the part I absolutely loved. So leaving that job, I still had the same thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to help people. And so the start of the talk of the creation of My Muse came about. And it was actually a little black dress dinner event that Paula had invited me to, that I talked to the women. I pitched my initial idea of My Muse to them, and they all sat there around the table and just said, "You have to do this." And that was my push. That was my push that I needed, that this was something that I really should follow. And it wasn't so much about following my dreams, but it was following that unknown, which was scary in itself. I'll talk about the bottom picture a little bit later, but just keep it in the back of your mind. And obviously the other picture is just of Mike and myself having a little adventure out on a boat that we used to have, and yeah, just having fun. One of the many adventures that we would go on together. So if I move on to the next slide now, the reason that I find this so shocking that there's nothing out there that helps Australians with this conversation is that 1 in 2 Australians will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. I know Paula mentioned that earlier on. That's 50% of the people around you. That's 50% of a workforce. And still, it's a conversation that we really don't like to have. As soon as any of us hear the word cancer, we start thinking the dreaded, that it's going to be death, or that people are going to be throwing up in a toilet bowl, or they're going to be looking gaunt. And that's not always the case. I actually say to people that I meet with now that when you walk from the train station to your office, you're probably going to walk past 2 or 3 or 4 people that have cancer right now and having treatment, and you'd have absolutely no idea. So it's not that typical Hollywood cliche of what cancer looks like, but there's going to be a lot of people out there. And when I even deliver any talks, I do ask the audience if they themselves or anyone that they know around them in their circle has been diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. Every single person in that audience will lift their hand up, which is a scary, scary thing, that we all are affected in one way or another, but we still don't know how to talk about it. So with this, over 40% of the new cancer cases in Australia occur with people within their working age. So that's 1 in 2 Australians, and 40% of those are going to be of working age. But in my case, and in many other cases of people that I've spoken to and interviews that I've run, companies don't know how to deal with it. And with the statistics that 7 out of Australians now will actually survive 5 years post-treatment, that's a lot of people that are actually surviving their cancer and surviving their treatment, and they're returning back to the workforce, or they're continuing on with their job, but people don't know how to deal with it. People don't know how to deal with the effects that treatments would have, that chemotherapy might have, etc. And so people have the isolation treatment, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And with some of the and one of the things that I really noticed was that with Australia, there's over 55% of carers are still working a full-time job. Now, I was part of those statistics, and there's so many carers out there that are looking after a parent or looking after a partner or a child, and they don't get the support that they need to continue on with their full-time job. Now, Paula and I talked about this a couple of days ago, but work isn't just about coming and sitting at a desk, or it, to a lot of people, it actually is such a huge thing for them. It is their life, and it gives them their identity. When somebody is sat in that doctor's room and told that they have cancer, at that immediate time, they feel that they lose so much of their identity. Their life and their body gets given to doctors and to medical staff to then start treatments or to start surgery on, and that identity starts to go, whether it's that they lose their hair or they lose their breasts. It doesn't really matter, but work is a huge part of that person's identity, and if a company isn't willing to support them, or it doesn't know how to support them, that can have a huge effect. Work continues on, and so whether it is a person that is a receptionist or a person that is a partner of a business, they've probably still got rent, or they've probably still got a mortgage to pay and a family to support. So everybody needs to be treated the same. It doesn't matter where they are in terms of that hierarchy within that business. If they've got cancer, they need to be given that treatment, and unfortunately at the moment there's no policies in place, and there's no actual there's no protocols that are in place. It's done on a case-by-case basis. So a lot of the time it's based on the relationship that you have with a manager or the decision maker as to how you're going to get treated and what kind of support you're going to get given if you end up having to have any of these kinds of treatments. So that's a little bit about the why, and why I decided to step out of my comfort zone of having my full-time job. Now, before I go into the conversations, I just want to talk a little bit more about stepping out of my comfort zone. A lot of people out there might be in a full-time job, but in the back of their mind, knowing that that's not where they want to end up, or they feel that that's not fulfilling everything in their life that they possibly want. But taking that huge step and actually going into something totally different is a very, very scary thing, and it was extremely for me. I've worked in jobs where I've been paid a salary for a very long time now, and my father actually is self-employed and created amazing businesses himself, but I'd always look at him and just think about how hard he'd always work every day, and just think, gosh, I just want to be working for a company where I get paid a salary, where I get annual leave. And I was reading a book before I left my job, and I can remember one of the quotes in there said that if you don't follow your own dreams, you only help somebody else follow theirs. And it really, really stuck with me. I sat there and actually thought, all I'm doing is helping my boss get his Range Rover. And it seems like such a strange thing, but that's what I was doing every morning. Yes, I was getting paid a chunk of money that was going into my bank account every month, but I was helping my boss follow his dreams, not my own. And so that was a little bit of a change in mindset that I had there and then. And when I decided on my Muse, it was a product that wasn't in the Australian market at all. I'd never done anything on my own like this before, and it was extremely scary. And the more and more conversations I started to have, I realized that I was actually doing something where I was being a game changer, where I was doing something that hadn't been done before. And I was creating a social movement where the more and more conversations that I started to have, and the more I started talking about my history and what I'd gone through and what I was wanting to come up in the future, I realized that it was actually a movement that I was creating. And the conversations that I was having, I was never a shy person. but I was always somebody that didn't really talk about my emotions much. I didn't really talk about personal things that much to the public, even to my friends. Now it's what I do every single day. My life is out on the My Muse website. I've written blogs on there. I've done podcasts where I've talked exactly about what's been going on, and it's given me so much strength and empowerment to keep on going with what I'm doing. Things like the Little Black Dress Venture Group have been really amazing for me. It's given me my little tribe around me that back me. And when you're working for yourself, that is something that I feel that everybody needs, is to have their little tribe of whether it's their family or their friends. And even Janine talks about the network that's around you and having the right people around you. And that has been so important for me, to make sure that I just really have those people there that have my back and that support me, but then also pick me up, pick me out on things that I might not be doing right or that might not be right for my business. So that's a little bit about my change in myself. I have seen myself grow so much, especially in the past 18 months, and going from that person that was wearing a black dress with tissue stuffed in the pockets on the day of Mike's funeral and bawling my eyes out crying that I didn't actually know if there were any more tears left, to now being this person that is able to talk about the journey that I had, but hopefully help people around me so that they don't have to go through the same journey that I did or that I've heard other people go through. So on that, apologies, I've started crying again, which is quite annoying. But I'm going to talk about the conversation, so things of what not to say and things that you can say. So this is something that is really huge, and so many people that I talk to talk about the fact that they really have, when somebody around them is told that they have cancer, they don't know what to say. And what happened in my case, and what happens with so many other people, is that because people don't know what to say, they actually run away. I had quite a few people in my life that actually just disappeared because they didn't know what to say, or they felt that there was nothing that they could do that could make it better. So I had a lot of isolation from friends, from even family members, and colleagues. So some of the stuff of what not to say when somebody tells you that they have cancer is that they will be fine. You don't know that. And as much as you want to be on that positive mindset, saying to somebody that they'll be fine also means that you really acknowledging what is going on for them. It's exactly the same as just saying just to think positive. I know that there's lots of podcasts out there. There's lots of articles that are written about actually having a positive mindset, and how that can change the way that treatments are, etc., and things like that. But telling somebody to just think positive, do you not think that that's what they are trying to do the majority of the time at the moment? And telling them that is not helpful. Something that a lot of people said to me when Mike was diagnosed was that it shouldn't happen to him. This is true. It shouldn't have happened to Mike, but it shouldn't happen to anybody. And it has happened to him. So people telling me that really didn't help me. When people are starting to go through treatment, having the conversation, and my friend had this a fair bit of just saying it's only hair. Some people aren't attached to their hair, but some people are. And for somebody to lose their hair is part of losing their identity in some cases. So by you putting it down to a thing of saying it's only hair doesn't help matters, even if you are trying to make it seem that don't worry about it, it will grow back, it will be fine. Having those comments cannot help. And something that I got told so much when I was a carer was that I needed to make sure that I looked after myself. Now, I know that my friends and everyone around me was just trying to look out for me, but this is really, really hard. you do try and look after yourself as best as you can, but your number one person that you're trying to look after is the person that's sick. And it doesn't really matter what was going on in my life and how stressful work was, or that I had a headache or whatever it was. The thing that I was concerned most about was being there for Mike and looking after him. I became second, and even though you're not meant to, you do. So I'll talk about things that you can say and do to help with that in a little bit. But the thing that I did say before was about being ignored, and people just disappearing. And people would also say, just call if you need anything, which I found really difficult because I'm not very good at asking for help at the best of times. But when this was going on, I didn't want to be a burden on anyone. So I didn't want to ask for help. I didn't ask for help. So if people said just to call them, I didn't call them, because what was I going to say? That I was really struggling and that I needed some help. So things that you can actually say and things that you can do to help in those situations, instead of saying saying that just to call, actually say to them, listen, I don't know what to do to help you. I don't know what I should be offering you. Is there anything that I can possibly do that is going to be able to help? Can I pick up your dry cleaning for you? Can I take your car to be car washed? That was something that a friend offered to me, and as silly as it might sound to so many people, it meant so much to me just for somebody to go and get my car washed for me, because it was filthy, but I didn't want to spend that time going and getting my car washed. I wanted to spend it with Mike. Also finding out what their favorite takeaway place is, or what their favorite meal is, and cooking that for them, or cooking a couple of batches for them so they can pop it in the freezer so they can have it when they feel like it. Or one of my friends would actually just bring me a coffee every morning when Mike passed away, and he'd send me a text message and he'd say, there's a coffee outside on your doorstep. I'll be outside for the next 5 minutes if you do want to talk or if you want a hug, but if you don't, that's absolutely fine. Just take the coffee and the croissant and go back into your apartment, and I'll check on you again tomorrow. And that was huge for me, because I wasn't going to ask for somebody to do that, but just the fact that he took the initiative and he did it meant so much to me. Also, instead of just saying that I'm here if you need me, is actually offering physical help. So, is it that they need help to go to chemo appointments? Is it that they need help to clean their house or their apartment, or for their kids to be picked up? Actually giving specific suggestions can be so much easier, and instead of giving those open-ended questions that can be so difficult. Or taking them for a pamper session, so going for a pedicure or a manicure, but going with them and sitting with them. That time is so valuable, and I found that time super valuable. People finding out when my favorite gym classes were, so they could be there to help look after Mike, so I could go to a gym class and actually do something for myself. And one of the huge things that I say to so many companies when I speak to them is the no flowers policy. So as beautiful as fresh cut flowers are, and as nice as they make your apartment look or your house look, flowers are also very expensive, especially in Sydney. And the $150 that might go towards a big bunch of flowers that gets delivered to a hospital or to a house when this news hits is not always the thing that people want. And sometimes helping them with the cost of their car parking at the hospital can be so much more of a thing that they actually need at that time. I was spending a fortune at car parks within the hospital every single day. And if somebody had just said, hey, here's a voucher for the car parking, or we've paid for it for the next week, that would have meant so much to me, rather than the other bunch of flowers that I would get that would just die, and I wouldn't even get time to enjoy it because I'd normally be in hospital with Mike. But then also allowing people to have their emotions, so allowing them to laugh, to cry, is really important. to continue to invite them to stuff. So invite them to parties, invite them to events. And if they can't make it, then take a video while you're there and have them involved in the event. I stopped being invited to stuff because friends thought that I didn't want that and that I was going to be sad at home on my own or with Mike. And that was another part of the isolation that was really, really hard for me. So they're just some of the things of a conversation and some of the things that I talk about when I go and work with companies. So I'll talk a little bit more about that with the next slide, where I talk about my Muse in a little bit more detail. So my Muse was set up, as I said, last year, and I decided to call it My Muse because I feel that Mike will always be my muse, and I want to continue to help people. So that's how I came up with the name. Now, with My Muse, what it's all about is going into businesses, whether they be large, medium, or small businesses within Australia or potentially in Asia as well, and doing training workshops and education pieces with their teams. So it could either be the HR teams or the wellness teams, or it could be a team that is directly impacted by somebody within their team that might have cancer, or it could be a leadership team as well. So it could be actually educating the managers that are managing other people, talking about the conversations around cancer, talking about the effects that cancer does have and the treatments have, such as chemotherapy and radiation therapy. The precautions that you actually potentially might need to take as well, about being in the office space. And then also I have a psychologist that works with My Muse. I have a couple of psychologists actually that work with My Muse, and they talk about the psychology behind the cancer, behind the person that has cancer, but then also the psychological effects that it can have on the rest of the team, and the things that it can bring up for them. I talk about my story as well, but we talk about how this can work within that company. So if somebody's specifically going through cancer right now, or is a carer for somebody with cancer right now, or it's something where they want to have a proactive approach, so they want to have it as part of their leadership training. And it is something that's new to the Australian market, but as I said before, with one in two Australians diagnosed with cancer, that means that everybody in one way or another is going to be affected by it. So companies need to actually start looking and start stepping up in how they're going to be able to support people within their workforce, so they don't lose them, so we don't lose this amazing talent of people that may be going through a treatment, but they also need to have that support there so they can have their treatment but continue to work as well, with how important it might be to that individual. So the training workshops can be anything from an hour to a couple of hours to day workshops. There's also a couple of companies that I'm speaking with at the moment where they're planning on running multiple day within different states to make sure that all their teams are actually supported in the relevant ways. So it can be a proactive or a reactive approach that My Muse is able to bring in. We're also able to bring in grievance psychologists and counsellors that are able to talk about if there is that diagnosis that unfortunately it is a terminal, and being able to support the team through that as well. So that's a little bit about My Muse. There is a lot more to talk about My Muse as well, and I'm happy to talk to anybody further about it. There is information on the website, but Paula will send round my contact details, which you can then get in touch with me directly. And so what I'm asking of everybody out there that is listening is, if you have any people that you know within businesses in Australia or in Asia that you could give me a personal introduction to, I'd like to talk to them about what they currently have in place for anyone that may be diagnosed with cancer within their workplace, and then also talk about what My Muse offers. But just having that conversation with different companies is really important to me at the moment, to talk about how much of an impact this can have. So any introductions whatsoever would be absolutely fantastic. And what I'm able to give back to you is that if you're able to go onto the My Muse website, which is www.mymuse.com.au, down at the bottom of the page, you can actually sign up for the newsletters. So if you just pop in your personal details into that form, I'm able to send you a document that I've created that's got some takeaways, with some of the things that I talked about those conversations of cancer, but there's a few more key points in there that might be helpful if it's something that is going on in your life at the moment, or something that you want to make sure that you're prepared for if it does come up ever. So that is pretty much all of my presentation at the moment. I will probably have Paula come on board now and see if she's got any questions that I might have to answer, but thank you so much for listening so far.
Oh, Nikki, thank you so much. I'm sitting here in a room in Brisbane Airport, and there's no tissues here, but I'm sure there probably wasn't a dry eye in the house. And never, please apologise to us for having emotions in your presentation. It's just, it's beautiful. And I go back to what I said at the start, that you're such a courageous woman, being brave and being vulnerable and taking what you've gone through in life and, you know, helping others. So it's just, yeah, it's awesome. You're being such a visionary and taking such a massive step. I know how hard, and I'm sure most of the people listening to this will know how hard it is to make that transition from a career into running your own business. Alone, set aside from the fact that you just lost your partner. I mean, geez, it's bad enough on its own. What I wanted to just explore for a few minutes is the challenges that you and I have spoken about, not around the actual conversation and your life's journey, but bringing that now to, you know, the business. And you've spoken to me separately about the challenges that you've had, and whether you've overcome them, or whether you're working with them. But talk to me about some of the challenges that you've had of actually, you know, setting up My Muse.
Yeah, so from the start, it's been a challenge. Like as I mentioned before, I've never started up my own business before, and so it was everything from registering my name to, you know, having a website. All of it started as a challenge. But I'd say that apart from the typical things that most people find when they start a business, a huge thing for me that came about, I'd probably say about 6 months ago. I started to suffer imposter syndrome so badly, and I really struggled with that, where I was just like, am I really walking into businesses? Like, what if they think that I'm not, you know, a specialist in what I'm talking about? What if they think that I haven't got the right qualifications, or what's going on? And it was one of those times where it actually kept me awake at night, where I really worried about it, where I just thought, am I doing the right thing? You know, should I just be in a comfortable full-time job where I don't have to worry about any of this stuff? And it took me a while to overcome it, but it also took me to have that tribe around me of people just going, no, Nikki, this is, you know, this, you've got this, you've had the life experience, you have seen where the gap is in the market, and you need to run with it, and you are a specialist in your field, and you've been doing this now for, you know, over 6 months, and you've got to believe in yourself. And Paula, I can remember you and I having these conversations, and it's about believing in yourself, which is such a huge thing. And I think that was something that I really did struggle with. And the other thing that I massively struggled with was that you read all these books and listen to all these podcasts of people that have started their own business, and that they sleep 4 hours a night, and that you know, that they're constantly working, and they don't have weekends. And I would start to feel guilty because I would give myself a weekend, or I'd be sleeping 8 hours a night and just going, oh, well, I'm not working hard enough. And I'd start beating myself up about it. And I've soon realized that it's so important for you to have the self-care element. So to look after yourself and to know when, if you're tired or if you're having a bit of a roadblock, to give yourself a break, to go for that walk, or to give yourself that weekend off to spend with your friends or your family, and not to feel guilty about it. Because when you're starting up your own business, whether it's with a business partner or it is just yourself, like, you are a crucial element to that business. And if something happens to you, or if you become sick, you end up, your business isn't going to run. Like, for me, my muse isn't going to be nothing if I end up having a burnout, or if I end up not being well. Yeah, so looking after myself was a huge lesson that I've had to learn along the way.
Yeah. And so, Nikki, also, you and I were talking about how what you're delivering is groundbreaking and absolutely should be front and centre of corporate Australia's mindset. And it really goes nicely with this 2018 Deloitte report that's out around the global trends of the rise of social enterprise. And I think My Muse is absolutely a social movement, a social enterprise, but it also fits into the well-being portion. And also, if you haven't seen the report, I'll share it separately, because they talk also about the aging population, so the longevity dividend around, we're living longer, we're working longer, and if we are suffering from some of these awful diseases as well in that period, you know, we've got to put that on the agenda to talk about, and to, you know, empower ourselves and our teams to be able to have conversations and being able to, you know where to go and what to do and what not to say. So I think that's been really helpful.
Yeah, and I do, one thing that I do always try and relate it back to is, if you think about where mental health was 10 years ago, like, it was a no-no to talk about it in the workplace, and it was, you just didn't, if you walked into a law firm and even mentioned those words, like, it was just like, oh dear. Whereas now, there's a law firm that I'm talking with where they've got a psychologist that actually works within their office space, that people can book in with, because they know how important and how crucial it is to people within their workforce. And so where mental health was 10 years ago, that's where we are with cancer at the moment, and it affects even more people. And so we need to start having those conversations now, because otherwise it's going to get to the point where it's going to be detrimental to workforces.
Yeah, yeah. So let me leave our session, and thank you so much for being vulnerable and open and honest and sharing your story with us. For those who don't know it, absolutely find Nikki in the Facebook group, in the members group. But as she said, register and leave your name and address, leave your email address with mymuse.com.au. But also, let's show Nikki some of our beautiful LBD love and put our thinking hats on, and maybe share her, and I think share this if it's appropriate too. Definitely connecting with her with any of your executive level connections, C-suite, leadership teams, HR people. I know Nikki has told me that she'd love to be into 6 or 8 influential businesses this time next year and delivering her My Muse program. So awesome. Big round of applause and massive hugs to you, Nikki. Thank you so much for doing our webinar this month.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.